Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 23rd of February 2022, coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7URP. Great to see you. On tonight's show, every day is a field day with our guest live from Arizona, George W0PHX. How did your radio station fare in the storms? And we find out what on earth this is. If you think you know what that is and you're very quick, we might be able to come on to that. But first, let's have a look at the storms that hit the news last week. We all knew they were coming. The weather, let's face it, whoever else we want to blame for anything, we certainly had enough notice of this. And obviously as radio amateurs, we're naturally concerned when something like this happens if we've got any kind of antennas up outside. So I asked some of you to send us some pictures and bits and pieces and news, and this is what we got. Firstly, from Martin, M0XKM. He says, this tree took out my telephone lines, including VDSL, but radio technology came to the rescue. Backup internet connection is provided by a 4G dish in the attic. I had more trees down around the back of the house, and my ZS6 BKW wire antenna came down too. But we're all safe and sound though, so that's good. Absolutely, Martin, that's the most important thing. And Tony M0TDK, he sent me this picture here. He said, I had to replace my low band Wyndham antenna in the first week of February when strong winds and several fat pigeons brought it down. So I was pleased on Friday morning to see that it was still up and in good condition after very strong winds on Thursday night. However, a very strong gust of Eunice just after midday brought the whole thing down again, snapping off the top 3 meters of the pole. Attached to this photo of the top section, the lump on the end is a balun. I think the next version of the mast will have to be a bit stronger, he says. I wonder what SWR one should expect from a 20-foot scaffold pole on 80 meters. That might be strong enough, mightn't it, Tony? Eunice has also removed much of the ridge from my barn. I'm no expert on roofs, but I gather being able to see daylight through the ridge from the inside is not always a good sign. Quite right. Thanks for that, Tony. And now Jim, G3YLA, he sent us this. The base of the hex beam, which also has the 40-meter element, is at about 6 meters, and the mast was lowered for the storm. I use a couple of thin cords tied to 2 spreaders to tie off to concrete posts to stop some of the flexing torque. These just hung down closely to the mast when not tethered. The hex beam is made by Ant MW0JZE, who provides excellent support, and I had recently added the strong wind strengthening struts from the centre post to about 1 meter long each spreader, and they make a big difference to the rigidity. The mast is a 3-section steel box section from Gary MM0CUZ, another excellent product which did a fab job. I stood at the base and could feel no flexing or vibrations coming down the support post bolted to the garage wall during the height of the storm. And also, he says, I reckon another great reason it's still up is the excellent installation job done by the destruction crew. As Jim also said, and obviously most of you know, I'm sure, that Jim is a weather forecaster, a professional weather forecaster, and he sent us this map as well. And he said, as far as I could tell, Storm Eunice on Friday 18th of February, we probably had gusts to about 67 miles an hour in the afternoon. He's out there sort of just outside Wyndham in Norfolk, so there we are. So thank you very much for sharing those with us. And just a bit of a self-indulgence now, not that it's something we're particularly proud of, but the Palmer household, Tammy and my house, we suffered quite a few things going wrong as well. We lost 2 trees. This is one of them, the major one, just out the front there. I don't know if you can see from that picture, but if you looked at the power pole, that's a power cable pole there, you can just see that whole tree is uprooted, isn't it? All of the roots have come out the ground, it's fell over, and it's hanging from that cable. And in fact, this picture will show you better. So that's not very nice. For us, the power's still on though, and I had UK Power Networks out. I must say, excellent service. I waited 2 minutes on the phone to talk to them, and within an hour and a half, 2 people had come out to have a look at it, but they said that as the cable was insulated, it wasn't a top priority as a lot of people were off electricity. So we're just hoping that we don't get much more and that we don't lose that altogether. We also lost the end of a shed, didn't we? Another tree out the back, and also some shingles off our...
Shingle tiles.
Shingle tiles, yeah, off our summer house. But as Martin said, you know, it's good we're all here and hopefully everybody's safe. So I hope you didn't suffer too much damage with it as well. And thanks again to Martin, Tony and Jim for sharing their pictures and video with us.
Andy, M0NCAR, said, I recorded 72 miles an hour here at his
Oh,
house.
right, okay. So you're out, I think, sort of more Brandon way, aren't you, Andy? Thanks for that. Yeah, so how did you do? I hope you did a bit better than some of us anyway. Now, another couple of dates for your diary. Last week we did mention the International Marconi Day, which is on the 23rd of April, and that will be at Caister Lifeboat Station. We'll bring you much more information next month in March. You better put yourself down as well to operate that. But there's another date which we can confirm with you now, and that is Barford Radio Rally. I know it's a real favourite for many. We did manage to run one last year, a little bit more restricted than normal because we weren't allowed to meet inside at those times, if you remember. But this year we've actually booked the hall and booked the field, and it's the 3rd of July. The 3rd of July. I've also sent the details to Radcom for the GBTRS News and also to Practical Wireless, but just wanted to tell you as our club members first. So put that date in your diary as well, the 3rd of July. Obviously, none of us know what's going to happen between now and then, but unless things were any worse than last year, restrictions-wise, I can't see why we won't at least put on an outdoor event and maybe more this year. But just put that date in your diary now anyway. Tammy,
Yep.
Little People.
Little People? Here's the Little People this week. It did make me smile.
I wonder why.
Ice 2D2.
It is, isn't it? It's lovely. And do you want to just share with everybody what you're actually building at the moment at home?
I'm building a Lego R2D2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't you think that had an influence on you?
It did, actually.
I've just realised what the little Yoda?
Well, yeah, I think it might be the child, actually, from the new series. Maybe.
I don't know.
Or it could be Yoda, yeah.
But it's a suite on a... Oh, isn't it clever? I love the ingenuity. There we are, miniature-calendar.com, as we bring you every week. That's a brilliant one, Tammy. Thank you.
Just another weather thing before we go any further.
Okay.
Paul 2E0PKH says 61 mile an hour recorded here in Dis.
Ah, okay. So it's still quite high. Hope I haven't had any other pictures or anything from anybody else, but anyway, hope you've all got on okay. Thanks for sharing that. Now we do need to move on because we need to go to our guest bang on time today because he's doing this in his lunch hour, believe it or not. So let's move on to our competition that we run every week, and we ask, what on earth is this? Now, I must admit, this is one that has really divided people, which is good, really. It like mixes it up a bit. So this is what we heard from everybody. Tom G8XQD says, I think this is a watch crystal remover inserter. It would make a handy addition to my watch repair toolkit. I make some of my own tools, by the way, from 10p charity shop cutlery. The steel's excellent, often stronger than some commercial tools.
Cool.
Bob GSDU says, I wonder if this week's object could be a type of coaxial dummy load. Yeah, I can see that.
Chris 2E1EVM says it's a watch back remover.
Paul G3VBT says it's an emergency cut-off button. Paul
2E0NXL, I think this week's mystery object is, I think it looks like a device for removing the glass and backs in wristwatches. I had a similar thing in a watch repair kit.
John G8VPE says it's an emergency stop button for electric sewing machine.
Mike G4KQY, it's a watch front glass crystal remover replacer.
And Steve G3VA says, is this week's what on earth is this? A vice of some kind. It looks like you turn the red part to tighten the jaws. But we can now reveal exactly what it is with all those diverse answers. And it is a crystal lift. This is what it's called. Tony G0MQG sent us this picture. And he says it's used for removing the crystal. Apparently that's what they call the glass in a wristwatch. Assuming the glass is an acrylic one, that can be compressed slightly to remove it from the bezel. Here is a picture of it on an old pocket watch.
Cool, isn't it?
You can see, yeah.
It looks bigger, actually, than it looks in the picture.
It does.
It looks quite small, doesn't it? I think that was why it's quite deceiving. I actually thought it was some kind of, like, connector plug or something.
Yeah.
It looked that small.
Yes, a connector was one. And, in fact, when I saw the picture come in before I read the text from Tony some months ago now, when he sent it, my instant reaction was I thought it was what I think Bob called it, which was a coaxial dummy load. I felt that's what it was, an end plug or something with that on it. Anyway, it fooled some of you, but a lot of you got it right. Well done. And thanks again to Tony G0MQG for sending it to us. Now, let's have a look at this week's competition. Do you know what this is? What on earth is this? I'm just going to give you a really cryptic clue now. The clue might be in the title. There we go. That's all I'm going to say. You know what I mean?
I know what it is.
Yeah, now. So do you know what this is or what it's for? Let us know by next Wednesday at 3 o'clock to radio@dcpmicro.com. And as always, we'll read out your answer with everybody else's and then eventually we'll reveal what that is. What on earth is this? Now, I promised, I guess, we get to him dead on 2:45. So I just got a little bit of time just to tell you what's happening this week on the club. Sunday, we've got GB Tourist News on GB3MB at 7 o'clock. On Monday night, we've got the Monday Night Net with host Steve M7CNY discussing moving up the license levels. That's what his suggested topic is for that. At 8:30, we've got the 80 metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And then here, next Wednesday, the 2nd of March, it's the Members Forum, a really important night. I can't tell you how important this is for us, the people that run your club, the committee. I'm the chairman of the club, as most of you know, but we've got a whole committee. And we want to know what you think, what we should do next, because clearly Britain is now getting back to some kind of normality. And we want to do what the bulk of the club members think. And maybe there'll be compromise. What I'm really getting at is, do we get back to meeting soon? Do we meet every week? Do we meet every other week? Do we still do things online? What about events and all those things? We want to hear from you. Now, as well as the forum next Wednesday night, which we hope many of you will be able to join us by Zoom, and I'll be sending a Zoom invitation out on the NARC newsletter. You'll also be able to join us in the usual ways, of course, with questions on BATC and on Facebook as well. And oh yes, now Malcolm has asked me to mention something about the contest tomorrow night. While I just find that little piece, can I just also mention that the week after next we've got the retro evening, which is where we'll invite you to send in pictures of retro objects. Stuff. Exactly.
Are you coming then? You retro?
I am retro, as you often call me. Malcolm asked me to also mention that the next club championship contest is CW on Thursday, the 24th of February. That's tomorrow, where we may experience a bit more pressure. He says, the club does quite well on contesting. We've made a good start in the earlier SSB and data contests, so it's hoped that we can enter a good number of logs on CW in order to maintain our leading margin. So please take part if you can. And that's from Malcolm G3PDH. And that's all almost to get on before we get onto our main event. Just to let you know, we would love to hear from you, your pictures, your stories and everything. That keeps us going with the club. Just send them to this email address before 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, and we'll usually include it in that week or a week or two afterwards. I had to hold off a couple of bits of news just so that we can finish exactly 2:45 tonight. But that's the address, radio@dcpmicro.com. And also, if you've got any pictures for mystery objects that you want to use for What on Earth Is This, we'd appreciate them too. And of course, we also have the club card, which we're happy to send anybody. We sent a record of, I think, 5 cards I've sent in the last week. If anybody's not feeling well, or they're celebrating a birthday or celebration or an anniversary or something like that, we're very happy to send it to them. But now, I think, bang on time, 7:45 here. We're delighted to welcome our guest from America. He's in Arizona. It's George W0PHX. George, how are you?
Hey, good evening, David, and to the rest of the group over across the pond, as we say. Hope all is well. Hope those storms have calmed down for you. And again, David, thanks for the introduction. My name is George Burger W0PHX, And
But it's really good
oh,
of
go
you
ahead.
as well to join us, because this is your lunch hour, literally, isn't it? It's literally you're going to spend an hour. So before you start, George, if I could just mention one thing to everybody at home. Normally we were quite relaxed about when we finish or anything, but George will only have an hour with us from now. So if you do have questions or comments for George, make sure you put them in good time before his presentation finishes, because we won't be able to extend it much at the end. But George, I'm not going to delay anymore. It was lovely to see you sitting out in the sunshine today. I think you've got our rain. We chucked it over your way now, but we're looking forward to your talk tonight. And every day is a field day. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. And I've been working on this presentation. I would say, well, it evolved because portable operating has gotten so popular, it seems, within the last 5 years. And so, I've tried to kind of, how can I make my presentation different? Because there's a lot of presentations and videos out there showcasing the different portable operating activities. So my hopes is that I can kind of do something a little different. But yes, every day is field day when you are portable operating. Quick little introduction. I recently moved to Arizona from Minnesota. Just a little bit about those two areas. Arizona is in the desert, and Minnesota is one of the coldest states in the United States. So Arizona's the hottest. So from one extreme to the other. I did 14 years of service as a police officer, along with just some fire and EMS mixed in there too. And I spent 4 years as the emergency management director for the city of Ely, Minnesota. And now I like to say I'm a full-time computer geek with Iridium Communications, and I just put a little ICOM radio over there. Iridium is a satellite communications company, and we never say we're competing with amateur radio or anything else. We can complement it. So that's my professional introduction. Now my amateur radio introduction. I decided to get licensed in 2010, and it was because I was helping out with the city that I lived in as far as doing various planning for disasters or weather events. And I just happened to run into somebody who was an amateur radio operator. I got interested in it, and I got licensed. Little did I know that it would actually come in handy for my professional career too. So I guess I like to operate from anywhere. Our house is getting built down here in Arizona, so I don't have a home station currently. So I rely on my mobile. My Jeep has both a dual band and an HF setup in it. Remote, if I can get into a remote station, and oftentimes portable out here, whether it's from a mountaintop or just anywhere I can set up. It could be in the backyard of where I'm currently staying. Some of the activities that I'm involved in are Summits on the Air, also known as SOTA, and the Worldwide Flora and Fauna Program, WWFF, which started out over in Europe and gained popularity in the United States. And it's fun for us to chase the DX operators in both the programs. Member of the following clubs: the CW Ops Club, which is a really great club that does a lot for amateur radio as far as offering classes for people who want to learn CW, along with just supporting various other aspects of amateur radio. The Amateur Radio Society of Arizona State University. I currently go to school alongside of working full-time at Arizona State University, so I decided to join their radio club there. The Maricopa Amateur Radio Association, that's I live in the city of Maricopa, and they got a terrific amateur radio club, and even still a member of the Minnesota club that I helped start. It was the Vermilion Range Amateur Radio Club, and they just invited me back to work communications for a sled dog race, but I think I would freeze because I moved down to the desert. So I'm passing that one up, uh, but yeah, I stay active with all those clubs, and I mean, I can't say enough about clubs offering just education and just offering so much to the hobby. Portable operating, and and feel free if you think of any questions. Definitely, I'll try to answer them at the end if you have any. But when I say portable, I'm talking about outside the shack, and this is actually down in Arizona. And if you can see my mast there amongst the cactus and all of those rocks, uh, sometimes that's my shack. I don't have the nice comfortable chair. That's going to be it. So you have to think about where you're going to set up and what's going to be, you know, uh, what's going to offer you the best operating position. And one thing about portable operating, the scenery is a lot better from, well, compared to like inside the house or even inside my Jeep. I'd rather be out here. And I always try to take pictures like this to show the people who are inside their houses, try to share the experience that that I'm seeing. And let's see here. And some other portable activities that I'm into. I do like to give demonstrations, and the photo on the left was one that I set up for a Boy Scout. It was a jamboree, I believe it was, and I was just talking about amateur radio, and there was a CW contest going on, so I got to show them, hey, we still use Morse code, and it's really easy to make contacts. That second photograph to the right, that's one of the little QCX minis. They're 5-watt radios, and my first two QSOs with that from Arizona happened to be into Russia and into Japan there. And so that kind of just it reinforces that if you have the proper tools, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but if you have the proper tools in your toolbox, you can make easy contacts. You can make them across the world. You can make them, 30. You can make them the next town over. The sky's the limit. You can contact satellites. That's another fun portable activity that I hope to get into. But talking to somebody who does a lot of satellite ham radio, it just amazes me that you're using a little satellite that's about this big, and you're using it to communicate, and that's something that we can do. Moving ahead too, this is my favorite portable setup because, as you can see, the size is, I mean, it's just a little bit bigger than my hand, and that includes a battery, microphone. There's even a CW paddle tucked under there, and the Yellowcraft KX2. And now that radio has a built-in antenna tuner, so I'd be able to work pretty much any band as long as I have a random wire. That can fit right there. That in the United States, that setup can go comfortably into a briefcase and can be brought on board of an airplane with you. So it's staying safe, and you just gotta make sure that you look at what the requirements are as far as batteries go. Different countries have different regulations for that, but I'll tell you what, that battery right there lasted me all day. I think I would probably say, gosh, 6 hours of operating time, and I still had more. Who knows? Maybe I could have made 10 hours, but that's another thing that amazes me about portable operating is that you can have a minimal setup, and as long as you work out all the kinks, you can make it really small and talk around the world. Mobile operating, it's outside the shack. I thought I would would touch on this. Inside my Jeep, I use an Elecraft KX3 radio, and CW, I do voice too. In fact, with 10 watts, I was able to talk from Arizona back to somebody in my Minnesota club, and we carried on for almost 20 minutes. And that was me talking QRP. He had a good antenna. My antenna was good. And we were able to just talk like we were talking in person or over the phone. So again, it's a lot of just studying what works and how you can effectively set it up and utilize it. The N0SA paddle, just an interesting story because it ties into portable operating. That little paddle there, I actually made a QSO with him while he was on a summit, and I looked up his QRZ page, and I saw that he made paddles, and they looked really nice because they were small and they looked sturdy, and I purchased one from him, and just a fun little story there is that I got that paddle because I worked him when he was portable. So, and yeah, just keeping things small again. You can transport it easy. It's not like you're lugging around a big Kenwood or an Elecraft or ICOM 7300 with you. Instead, you got something that you could literally carry with your pinky. And I talked about the toolbox, and I like to use this because if you don't have the right tools and you're working on a car, you often have to go buy the right tool, and it's delaying your project, or you strip a screw. You have to have the right tools, and part of that is experimenting, and that's part of my. I want to bring forth the process of what makes portable operating successful and how can you improve. And with that, we'll talk a little bit about these. I tried to come up with what are my priorities for a successful, portable outing. And I think at the top, I would say it's the antenna because that's what's going to take up the most space. Certain modes work better than others at, when you're using less power. So that's one thing. If you don't know how to utilize one of those modes, but you think it would make it your portable outing more successful, go ahead and learn it. I call it the methodical mindset, which is avoiding obstacles, and that's an important one because that could just you could sit there and you could be on your way. You could drive an hour, and you realize you forgot something. So I like to touch on that, and I do believe that is a priority that you need to make sure that you have there in your toolbox. Multiple options, that's another one because sometimes something doesn't work out and you can either end your day or you can try something else. So I think that's another thing that you want to bring with you. Portable antennas. So like you probably have guessed, I'm an Elecraft fan with their radios. My favorite antennas that I found to work best for portable operating, we'll start out with the dipole. The dipole is, that is the antenna. Everything is, it seems like it can be based off of a dipole in some way. It can be easy to set up. It can be difficult to set up. But I've always found it to be one of the more reliable antennas if you are to go out and operate portable. A random wire antenna, which I like the PAC-10, just for the ease of use. You can make your own antenna, but I like things that are efficient and easy. And I'm trying to think. I can't recall what the company is. I think it's the Ham Radio Workbench on Facebook. They were the ones that came up with the PAC-10. They do so much for the hobby. and so supporting them is, it was a no-brainer. That random wire with the 9-to-1 on, that is, you need an antenna tuner, but if you're looking at a space issue or you want something simple that you could maybe just run, I've ran it across tree branches, not, that's not good radio theory there, but I wound up, I think in 5 minutes I had, let's see here, I worked 2 people in Croatia, 1 in Spain. I mean, it was DX just off the bat. And again, that was just running a wire across tree branches as high as I could reach. Realistically, I'd like to have that up in the air, but I could not get a mast where I was operating from, so I used tree branches and it benefited. I made some good DX contacts with that. The other reason why I like these 2 antennas, they're easy to pack, and that's another thing that's going to make your outing successful, because then you're not lugging around just so many parts, or you need to remember each additional part when you're taking it out or packing it up. You don't want to forget something. That just that ruins the day too. But those are my favorites. Now, ultimately the other antennas that I like that would be for your handy talkie or your HT, and that would be a directional Yagi antenna, or they make another antenna called the Slim Jim, and you can have some fun on the 2 meter band or the 440 band. I remember one day I was able to talk from central Arizona, or I was actually between central and south Arizona, and just because of how high I was on a mountaintop, I was able to talk into central Arizona and down to southern Arizona, and it was like I was a repeater in a sense. But that directional antenna is what helped me. A directional antenna can also get you out of a pickle, as we say. When I was doing communications for a sled dog race, I was not able to get into the repeater that they were using with just the regular the whip on the handy talkie. So I took out the directional antenna, my little portable beam antenna. There's various ones out there, but they're typically, I don't know, they're probably I would say about, less than a meter in length. And I just set that, I rested it up in I made a little stand out of some tree branches, pointed it towards the repeater, and I was able to get in full quieting into the repeater. So again, just having options out there is one of the biggest things you can do to avoid mishaps like that. All right. And modes. Modes are important because if you only want to use 10 watts or 5 watts and you want to make some contacts, well, you gotta play the odds. CW is going to be very reliable, and I think it's worthwhile. It's very worthwhile to learn, because you're going to see with CW, you don't have the computer decoding your signals like in some of the digital modes. And what I mean by that is, if you get QSB, your signal with a digital signal may not come through it might not be readable. But with CW, you're kind of using your ears, and you can make the cue. So you can also, if you didn't catch something, you could tell that other operator. You could have them clarify it and get it that next time around. I've used 700 milliwatts, less than a watt, and I was able to get into I think it was Hungary, and I was using 700 milliwatts. I think I even was able to get into Russia from my Jeep, and I was only using a ham stick antenna, which I mean, I would say it was basically a vertical antenna. It was very inexpensive, and I was able to make a very long distance QSO with 700 milliwatts. So there's my selling point about CW and why it's a tool you could add that could make you get some of those fun contacts. Digital, again, it's very reliable, but the limitations are a lot of those digital modes, you have to get all or none when it comes down to the whole packet being decoded. But I mean, again, there's weak signal modes that you can bring out in the field. And voice, I never leave home without a mic because you might need it, and you might give it a try. Like I said, I've used low power and made perfect rag chews with low power, but you got to understand. I think it's 100 watts of voice is equal to, I think it's 5 watts CW. So again, when I say play the odds, that's where obviously CW is gonna prevail in that. But again, not everybody knows CW. Not everybody's on digital. There's a lot of people on voice, and I think it's worthwhile because I still get a kick when I make those. Even DX at low power on voice. WinLink, now digital for portable, we don't have to be doing an activity. We might just have to be portable for some reason. And this is kind of going into that emergency management type scenario. And this is, when I had to, when I had to express interest and go for that emergency management director position, I had to have a selling point as to why I would be a good candidate for that job, and it was because I have these tools in my toolbox that in our area it was considered remote. We could establish communications relatively quick, and part of that is utilizing WinLink. It's email over radio waves. In field day, we always try to make a WinLink contact just to prove that, hey, we can email over radio waves. We don't need that internet. We can use radio waves. And that's just something you could experiment with. And then you think about that is if your communications went down at home and you had to email, you could utilize WinLink. APRS, that's another one. The founder, the founder, he just passed away and became a silent key. But APRS is one of the coolest little modes that you can do with a little HT. You can do it on HF, or you can just utilize your mobile radio and you can send out your location. You can send text message to a phone if you need to. You can obtain information like weather forecasts, or you can obtain, you could obtain band conditions like what are the current solar conditions. You could even turn on your a light at your house if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend that because I think anybody with APRS could do that. But APRS is pretty cool because it's a network using both radio and the internet. And a lot of people in Summits on the Air and all these other different portable operating programs, you can spot yourself to say, hey, I'm at this park or I'm at this summit, and I'm on this frequency, or simply if you're using CW, once you start sending CW, it's going to automatically spot you. But your APRS is a good way to announce, provided you have that infrastructure, digipeaters or eye gates that your radio waves can go into. The other thing that I became a big fan of was 6-meter FT8 VHF. And this is very popular in the USA for people who are chasing grids. And grid chasers love rare grids. So for instance, I used to actually live in a rare grid. So even at my house, if the 6-meter band was open, because sometimes it's not, sometimes it is, if it's open, I would have pileups immediately because of people trying to get that grid. I also got a kick when you could work DX over the summer using 6-meter. Why? Because, well, this slide, so the photo on the left is actually, that was my old pickup truck, and I'm at a very rare grid. Actually, it's one of the top, at the time it was one of the top 25 rarest grids in the United States. And I think it was only, gosh, it had to be, I would say 4 meters, less than 4 meters off the ground, that little Yagi antenna for 6 meters. And to the right, you can't really see my radio that's in the passenger seat, but I brought my ICOM 7300 because it does a wonderful job of FT8 and a laptop, and I just did some FT8 from there. But yeah, as you can see, 6 meters doesn't require much as far as height goes. So very fun, and just another one of those portable activities that you could get into. Having a methodical mindset. Okay, this is one that I like to touch on because I've done this before. Maybe you need a physical checklist. Maybe you just have to have the same routine before you go out and operate portable. But this is going to avoid forgetting important items. All these items at one point or another, I forgot before. So that's why I wanted to highlight this. Coax, battery, adapters. Adapters, that's a big one because you might not need it, but you might run into a situation where you have to use it. So I would always suggest making sure those are in your little toolkit as well. Practice setting up. Even if you don't get on and operate, practice your setup at home, because then you're going to think about how you can use obstacles or plants or rocks or picnic tables, or even your, you could tie up your mast to, like here's a little table. I've tied it to the rims on my vehicle, anywhere where I could, get some height with the mast and make sure it's sturdy. And that's part of thinking about challenges and preparing for them. I like these, they call them gear ties. They're from a company called Night Eyes, and those are those yellow, they're rubber, and the rubber covers the metal, and you can basically just twist something up and it'll hold. So that's my little, it's not really ham radio related as equipment goes, but it's something that I'd want in my toolkit for, even if I don't have to use it, at least I know it's there. Multiple options. Having multiple options increases your chance for success. I think I talked about that already, but if you only have one mode available, it limits you just to that. So learn some more modes. Think of other modes you could bring. It's worth it learning, if CW, it might sound daunting at first, but it's something that you'll have fun with once you get it, and eventually it will click. Applications to other areas. This again helped me in my own professional career. When you do have to improvise something with radio, you're training yourself to think quickly and how you can improvise to set something up or how to get something to work. It reinforces theory. Just thinking about antennas, modes. You learn this in the instruction, or in your in your books or classes when you're going through the you're learning for your ham radio licensure. But this tends to reinforce what you've learned. And again, application to other areas, it's very these skills that you learn during portable operating, they're beneficial during contests. Like if you have a mishap with an antenna, well, let's get back on the air. How can we do it? Emergencies, power outage, communications outage. Hey, we can make sure we got radio going, or disasters. And I think that's where it's either the next slide or the slide after that, where I just got a little bit of an example of how we trained using amateur radio for potentially a disaster. And this was the 2019 interoperability exercise. And so part of my job as an emergency management director was to put on exercises. And I thought, how can we utilize amateur radio? Well, we utilized a marathon to practice emergency communications. Part of that was to get our public safety involved, which would have been law enforcement, our emergency medical services, and our fire departments, and the amateur radio operators. And how can we communicate, or how could we establish communication amongst all of them? And public safety radio had limitations with this marathon route. But with a bit of planning, amateur radio was able to fill in those gaps because of, like I said, we got to think outside the box. We have to improvise, and we can usually make it happen. But so it complemented the public safety radio. Organized communication was a big thing, and proper planning resulted in the successful exercise. We also had our backup plans established if the original plan did not work. And it was just something that we could demonstrate to the public why amateur radio is still a big part of emergency management. And in closing, and I think I'm getting there right about that time too. So I think we're perfect timing here. Some of the best advice I was given was to add those tools that will make contacts. I wasn't very keen on learning Morse code, but guess what? I had a lot of advice that it would make more contacts, and it would make it would make you a better operator. And I couldn't, I attest that CW has made me a better operator and made me more confident that I could make contacts in an emergency situation or in a contest even. Again, put in that work, because now you got that really good tool in your toolbox. Biggest thing is have fun and experiment. This is a hobby. If something doesn't go wrong, learn from it. If it's not fun, you're not going to be wanting to do it, and you're missing out on those learning moments. Experiment, try different antennas. You may find that you've got an antenna that you've never found on the internet or in any books before, and this thing's working awesome. Well, experiment and share it. I mean, amateur radio is open source, learning from each other. So that's, I know that's fun to me, but again, have fun with this. It's not it's not a serious situation when you go and and you're out portable. It's got to be fun. Don't limit yourself. There's so much to explore in amateur radio. I've used the International Space Station to text message using APRS. That was, I guess that would be my one satellite contact. We can use the International Space Station as a satellite contact, but I was able to send a text message to my friend who was 20 miles away. Unfortunately, we weren't quick enough to get the return, so we had to wait an hour before that International Space Station to come back around, and he was able to contact me we can say we use the International Space Station to text message, but like again, I don't want to limit myself, so one day I'm going to learn to do actual satellite contacts that are out there with the birds, as they call them. And that brings me to the end, and I think we're pretty much right on time. So I'm willing to take any questions that anybody has, or if feel free, anything.
Thank you. Yeah, George. Well, that's a real good whistle-stop tour of portable operating. So as George has just said, if you've got some questions for him, we're still on his lunch break. We hope to let him have a little bit of time to actually eat something and drink something as well. But don't hesitate. Do ask them now. George, I mean, I've written down here, obviously a lot of the radio that you've talked about, all of the radio you've talked about has all been out and about. So do you do much radio at home from your shack at home, or is everything you do really pretty much portable?
Yeah, right now, because our home's actually getting built. I'm at work right now, and they're doing construction. But at home, usually that would be where a lot of it's done. But right now, actually, because my home's being built and I'm living out of my mother-in-law's house, I'm not on the air much. But if I have my Jeep where it's got my HF mobile station, or I get a chance, I'm in school and trying to balance school and work. It's been taken out a lot of the weekends, but usually on the weekends I would try to find a summit and go activate, or just go out back in the patio and just set up a portable station.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, it sounds just loads of fun. I'm sure you've encouraged lots of us, and as you say, the Elecrafter KX2, the KX3 have come out. There's more recently, I guess, the IC705 is the newest kid on the block in terms of a radio that can do almost everything. So anyway, we've got a couple of questions for you already. So do ask them at home now if you can. Tom Tierney asks, what are the best batteries to use? You did have a picture of a blue one, I think, with running your KX2. What do you find are the best batteries?
So in the United States, I'm not sure if they do any international, but in the United States, two of the big companies are Dakota Lithium, and the blue one that I have is from a company called Bioenno. And what they are, lithium ion phosphate batteries. And they're safer than your typical lithium batteries that you get for remote controlled airplanes or cars. And I just think you get more capacity with the lithium ion phosphate. And yeah, I swear by those lithium ion phosphate, or they call them LiPo 4 for short.
Okay, all right. I haven't heard of that one. There is a company that my father-in-law actually is very keen on radio control. It's Tammy's dad is very keen on radio control, and he buys some of his things from Hobby King. I think that's a US company, isn't it? So that
I think so, but yeah, I've seen that company before. Yes.
So hopefully they do that sort of chemistry as well. Got a question now from Roger G3LDI. He says, we've got a large membership of CW Ops here in NARC, and I can tell you they really do. You mentioned the CW tonight, and you've made their night already. And he says, do you intend to set up a home station? I suppose similar to my question, actually. You explained it's still being built, your house, and if so, he says, we will look out for you.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. I'm in what's called a homeowners association, or an HOA, and they oftentimes can limit what you can and what you can't put up. So then I do have a little bit of experience with remote radio, and so my hopes would be if my station's not up to par and not able to stay under the radar of the HOA, that I would be able to set up that remote station back at our family property in Minnesota, and that would but definitely hopes are to get something at the house that's being built. Yes,
that's good. Well, okay, let us know when you do, and we'll make sure that our CW guys make good contact with you. Mike G4DYC has said, George, many thanks for the motivational presentation. What flora and fauna exploits do you do? And 7.3 he says.
I mean, I've been to the Grand Canyon. That's one of our big national parks. I've been to wildlife refuges where there's a lot of birding and just wild animals that are free to roam there without needing to be. They try to increase the population of those animals. Let's see what else. Rivers. There's rivers. There's trails that have some sort of a environmental or natural, just some notoriety to them. And I'm trying to think of some of the other places. It's mostly protected areas that have some sort of significance to, the environment. So and yeah, there's so many portable operating programs out there. Mines, castles. I don't think we have any castles. Maybe we have a couple in the United States, but I know there's a bunch in Europe there, but they have castles. I'm just saying, we have beaches, islands. I mean, it's
we have quite a few contests as well annually now, and there's even more building up. So we have things like, I think there is a castles on the air. There's certainly churches on the air, and obviously we've got a lot of old churches in the UK. And it's becoming, I think, quite popular. Museums on the air is another one. But it strikes me that, you going out, especially the flora and fauna, which I must admit, when I read your resume before we did tonight, and I thought, I didn't even know what that FF was. I just never heard of that before. But it's a great way of maybe combining a bit of a vacation as well as your hobby. Exactly.
And, I just sometimes when I was working as a police officer, I would turn on the web SDR or just something to listen to, and I would listen to some of these European activations in the worldwide flora fauna, and I was like, man, that's a party over there. I mean, it just pile ups and just really good operating techniques, and that's kind of why I gravitated towards that program, was because it just the good operating techniques that I was hearing from Europe, and then it eventually it caught on in the United States, and yeah, it's just like I said, it's like a party, that worldwide flora fauna. It seems like
it sounds really good. I just never heard of it before. Tom has come back and said another question for you. Connectors. He says he's not a fan of power poles, and he uses Deans, and every time a new radio arrives with a power cord, he cuts it off and fits a couple of Deans. So what's your favourite connectors?
Most of the stuff in the United States, we unfortunately we use power poles, but as far as connectors go, though, I mean, you can almost make your own. I've heard of people using USB connections and transferring for low power, but I think just you could utilize anything. But on the topic of maybe that power pole breaks on you. Maybe you step on it, or maybe it just cracks. We had that issue in Minnesota when it would get so cold that the plastic would crack. And but at that point, making sure you have something that you could strip away the rubber casing on the wire, and some electrical tape, and just so you can make a connection yourself in the field is what comes to my mind. But yeah, I just because they're so widely available in the United States, and a lot of the radio equipment in the United States is being sold with power poles. Molex is the other one, and it's just another connector. But yeah, I'm a fan of the power poles just because they're so abundant here. But Molex does a good job too.
Yeah, and as you say, at the end of the day, if you're out and about, as long as you've got something like a pocket knife with you and a bit of insulating tape, then you can hopefully improvise and make a connection when you're dealing with relatively low powers. I guess it's not quite so serious. Well, look, George, we haven't got any more questions for you, but I mean, you've been truly inspirational. I mean, if the weather wasn't so bad here, I'd be out there now. I think starting to think about what we could do this summer, with portable operating and making it an everyday part of your life, which is what you've been doing. So thank you ever so much for joining us today, for using up most of your lunchtime as well, giving us this wonderful talk. And we wish you well, and hopefully we'll hear you on CW Ops at some point.
Thank you. And I think, the biggest thing I could say is just experiment, have fun, and I'll always have that backup plan, and you'll be successful.
Very good advice, and have fun is really important, isn't it? This is a hobby after all. Thank you ever so much, George. Take care. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too, Dave, and the rest. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you. There we go. We're going to let him have a little bit of time to have a bit of lunch before he starts back work in 10 minutes or so there. So thanks very much again to George W0PHX. Now, just a quick rundown again. Oh, by the way, we did have some comments earlier on. I think we've got a bit of time now to go to those. We had a few comments about people with their weather and have they'd suffered or not. Julian 2E0DJR says, had some really good gusts of wind, but only some damage with the 10-11 metre antenna bent like a banana, but the other two are fiberglass. So what does that tell you? Hi. What else came back here? Nigel 2E0NLK says no wind damage at all, and he's got 9 aerials and they're all still up. Steve Ayres, very good advice here. You like this one, don't you, Tams? He said, Amazon left a parcel behind my shed on Friday. Anyone see my shed? She's very good. And Paul had said, I think we talked about that 61 miles an hour here that he'd experienced there in near Dis. Anyway, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. An early-ish night for us, actually, as well. But just to let you know again what's happening in the club. On Sunday, we've got the GB2RS News on GB3MB at 7 o'clock. Monday night, 7:30, the Monday Night Net with M7CNY, and at 8:30, the 80 metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And then next Wednesday, 2nd of March, really important for us, especially if you're a member of Norfolk Amateur Radio Club. We want your feedback on what we should do next in terms of meeting, opening up as the country begins to open up. We need to start making plans now, booking venues, whatever, and booking things. I've already told you about a couple of events that we've already booked, like International Marconi Day on the 23rd of April, and we've got Barford as well. But we want to know what you'd like us to do now that the pandemic certainly isn't over, but we want to know how you feel, the majority of you, how you feel about meeting up and what we should be doing and where we should be meeting. There'll also be a questionnaire that's going to be coming on a special newsletter in the next couple of days as well. And if you can take part in that and just quickly fill it in online, that would help us as well with the information for next Wednesday. So I hope you'll join us for that. It's really, really important. But that's about it, I think. From Tammy, M0TC.
Yep, goodbye.
And from me, David G7RP. Take care. We'll see you next Wednesday for NARC Live. Bye-bye.